Imagine the corridors of the formidable Tower of London, its cold stones echoing with the secrets of the condemned. In the year 1542, one such secret was the tragic fate of Jane Boleyn, Viscountess Rochford. Her life at the court of King Henry VIII was a woven tapestry of ambition, intrigue, and ultimately despair. But here's where it gets interesting. What if Jane's political maneuvers had succeeded? Jane Bolin, born Jane Parker, entered the royal court as a maid of honor to Catherine of Aragon in the early 1520s. Her marriage to George Boleyn, brother to Anne Boleyn, thrust her deeper into the political whirlpool. According to letters from court insiders, Jane was a woman of keen wit and a player in her own right in the chess game of court politics. However, her ambitions tangled dangerously with those of her family. As Anne Boleyn's star rose, so too did Jane's, but with power came peril. Records from the time illustrate that Jane provided testimony that condemned her own husband and sister-in-law Anne, leading to their executions in 1536. This act of perceived betrayal did not sit well in the court's collective memory. Witness accounts describe her as haunted by shadows of those she betrayed, a woman walking the fine line between survival and damnation. The truth, however, was far darker. Her involvement in the Queen's downfall was a desperate gamble to preserve her own position, a move that backfired catastrophically. In the winter of 1541, Jane was implicated in the scandalous affairs of Catherine Howard, Henry VIII's fifth wife. This association with treason led to her arrest, and records from the Tower of London detail her final harrowing days. Alone and stripped of her titles, Jane faced the executioner's block on February 13, 1542. According to an eyewitness, her eyes were wide with a terror that spoke of the horrors seen only by those who have greatly sinned. The execution was not just the physical end for Jane, but marked the culmination of a series of betrayals that echoed through the halls of power. Reflecting on her life, it's impossible not to feel a blend of horror and sorrow for the paths she chose and where they ultimately led her. As we delve deeper into her story, each revelation will unfold layers of ambition that perhaps was her only true companion through her rise and fall. Imagine the opulent courts of King Henry VIII, where the Boleyn family's ascent to power began with whispers of promise and the rustle of silk gowns. Jane Parker, born to a life of moderate nobility, found herself at the heart of this power vortex when she married George Boleyn in 1525. Their union, initially a tapestry of love and ambition, swiftly entwined with the political machinations at court. According to the royal letters of the time, George was not only a husband, but also a key player in the royal court. His fortunes tied closely to those of his sister, Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's enchanting queen-to-be. The early days at court were led with grand feasts and whispers of power, where the clink of goblets was often drowned by the schemes of rising nobles. Records from the Abbey reveal that Jane's influence over George grew as their positions at court solidified. However, beneath the golden surface, the court was a chessboard of tension and betrayal. Witness accounts describe how Jane, draped in jewels and fine fabrics, watched from the shadows as her husband and sister-in-law danced dangerously close with the king's favor. But here's where it gets interesting. What if Jane had foreseen the perilous fall that awaited them? Could she have altered their grim fate? As the Boleyns reached the zenith of their power, The air at court thickened with envy and resentment. The year 1536 marked the turning of tides. A letter from George to Jane, intercepted by royal spies, contained veiled references to the Queen's waning influence. This document, riddled with fear and foresight, hinted at their impending doom. According to a courtier's diary, the once celebrated whispers turned into murmurs of treason, and the Boleyn's stars began to dim. The truth, however, was far darker. George and Anne were arrested, charged with incest and treason. The public spectacle was a feast for the eyes and a famine for the soul. Jane, once a figure of grace and power, was left to grapple with her swirling emotions, betrayal, fear, and a haunting foresight. Her heartbreak was palpable as she witnessed the execution of her husband and sister-in-law, their heads held aloft as the crowd's roar eclipsed their final moments. The fall of the Boleyns was not just a descent, but a plummet into darkness, a stark reminder of how closely ambition is tied to destruction. As we leave this scene, one can only wonder how the echoes of these events still resonate through the annals of history, a chilling symphony of ambition, betrayal, and despair. Imagine the opulent courts of King Henry VIII, where whispers of betrayal mingle with the rustle of silk gowns. It is here, within these gilded walls, that Jane Boleyn, a lady-in-waiting, becomes entangled in a deadly web of court intrigue. According to royal letters of the time, Jane, driven by complex motives, played a pivotal role in the downfall of her husband, George Boleyn, and his sister, Queen Anne Boleyn. As the Boleyns' influence grew, so did their enemies' resentment. Records from the Abbey reveal that Jane, perhaps seeking favor or swayed by fear, provided testimony that implicated both Anne and George in charges of incest and treason. A witness account describes Jane's testimony as delivered with a trembling voice, her eyes darting in fear, as though the very walls might condemn her. What if Jane had chosen silence? One might ponder as the shadows of the tower loom over her fate. Could her silence have altered the tragic course of events, or was the machination of court politics too vast to overcome? The revelation that strikes with chilling force is the content of a letter written by George Boleyn on the eve of his execution. He wrote, "My wife's words have sealed my fate. Misguided, she has woven her own doom as well." This document, stored in the National Archives, underscores the profound betrayal and its double-edged consequence. As her family's fortunes plummeted, Jane's own future darkened. Betrayed by her calculated gambit, she was eventually arrested and met the same grim end as those she had condemned. The air in the tower grew thick with despair, the clink of chains a constant reminder of her impending doom. This tragic irony is a stark testament to the perilous interplay of power, fear, and betrayal that characterized Tudor court politics. But here's where it gets interesting. Jane's story serves as a haunting mirror to our own fears of misjudgment and the irreversible paths it can lead us down. As we peel back the layers of her actions, we're left to wonder about the real cost of survival in a world where loyalty is currency spent too quickly and the price of ambition can be one's soul. As the echoes of Anne Boleyn's downfall reverberated through the opulent hallways of the Tudor court, another tragic figure was being drawn into the vortex of royal displeasure. Jane Boleyn, once a favored lady-in-waiting, found herself ensnared by the same whispers that had condemned her husband, George, and his sister, Anne. On May 18th, 1536, just one day after witnessing her husband's execution, Jane was arrested, her world collapsing with shocking abruptness. According to royal letters of the time, Jane's arrest was ordered by King Henry VIII himself, who believed her testimony had been crucial in the conviction of her own husband and sister-in-law. The Queen's Lady, Jane Rochford, hath been taken to the Tower, declared a court dispatch, an ominous sentence that sealed her fate. Transported under guard through the streets of London, the harsh clatter of horse hoofs on cobblestones must have echoed like a death knell in her ears. Inside the cold, damp walls of the Tower of London, Jane found herself isolated and terrified. Records from the Abbey show that the once vibrant courtier was now reduced to a shadow, haunted by the ghosts of her actions and the stark reality of her impending doom. Witnesses describe her pacing the confines of her cell, her whispers filling the air, a blend of prayer and madness. What if I had remained silent? She might have pondered, the weight of hypothetical betrayals weighing heavy on her heart. The conditions of her imprisonment were harsh and unforgiving. A letter from a fellow prisoner reveals, Mistress Jane, she languishes, her spirit withered by the cold stone that doth surround us. Her days were punctuated by the distant sounds of the court, the lives she once knew continuing without her, a stark reminder of her precipitous fall from grace. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite the dire circumstances, a flicker of hope still lingered. Jane believed that her royal connections might yet save her, a testament to the persistent human spirit facing overwhelming adversity. This hope, however, was dashed cruelly, setting the stage for her eventual tragic demise. As we anticipate the grim conclusion to Jane's story, we are reminded of the brutal reality of Tudor politics, where favor is fleeting and the price of ambition often fatal. The truth, however, was far darker, a reminder that in the shadow of the crown, no one was safe from the caprices of a king's wrath. The cold morning of February 13th, 1542, dawned with a chilling silence over the Tower of London. Jane Boleyn, once entwined in the dizzying heights of royal favor, walked towards her grim fate, the executioner's block. According to accounts recorded in the state papers, the air was thick with despair as she stepped forward, her footsteps resolute yet betraying a tremble. "I am ready to die," Jane declared, her voice echoing off the ancient stones. A poignant mix of defiance and resignation, capturing the crowd's breath. Witnesses describe her glance as she looked upon the gathered masses, her eyes reflecting a haunting blend of fear and resolve. But here's where it gets interesting. What if Jane had never become entangled in the deadly intrigues of the Tudor court? Could a simpler life have spared her this brutal destiny? These questions hung in the air, as palpable as the morning mist. As the executioner raised his axe, a hushed silence fell. The sharp blade glinted ominously under the weak winter sun, a foreboding sign of the heart-wrenching climax to come. Records from the time detail the executioner's apology for the potential pain, a rare humane gesture amidst the usual harshness of Tudor executions. "God forgive you, sir. I forgive you," she whispered, her words carried softly by the wind, instilling a brief moment of human connection in the otherwise stark ritual. The axe fell, and the crowd gasped, the finality of the act echoing the brutality of her sentence. This stark moment of termination was not merely an end, but a reflection of the vicious cycles of trust and betrayal that characterized the Tudor court. The gruesome reality of her demise serves as a poignant reminder of the perilous dance between power and vulnerability. The truth, however, was far darker. Beyond the immediate horror of her execution, Jane's death marked a critical point of introspection about the justice and morality of the Tudor legal system. Her execution, while legally sanctioned, was steeped in moral ambiguities that continue to resonate through history, eliciting both sorrow and introspective shock from those who recount her story. As we reflect on Jane Bolin's final moments, we are drawn into a deeper understanding of the human cost of political machinations. Her story is a stark portrayal of the thin line between royal favor and fatal disfavor, a narrative that continues to captivate and horrify even centuries later. As the shadow of the cautioner's axe fell, so too did the legacy of Jane Boleyn. But here's where it gets interesting. The aftermath of her death unveils not just a tragic narrative, but a poignant reflection on the perils of courtly power. Following her execution on February 13, 1542, Jane's story did not simply fade away. It rippled through the annals of history, her name synonymous with betrayal and the volatile nature of Tudor politics. Witness accounts describe the somber silence that settled over the crowd as Jane's final words lingered in the cold air of the Tower Green. God have mercy on my soul. Good people, I beg you pray for me, she proclaimed, a statement documented in the chronicles of the Tower. This moment, frozen in time, marked not just an end, but the beginning of her enduring legacy as a cautionary tale. Records from the Abbey show that, despite her royal connections, Jane was buried in an unmarked grave, her death marked by stark anonymity, a stark contrast to her once vivid presence at court. What if Jane had managed to regain the king's favor? Could her fate have swung from disgrace to redemption, altering the narrative woven by her enemies? This hypothetical scenario tugs at the imagination, suggesting an alternate path in a world ruled by whims and whispers. According to royal letters of the time, Jane's actions and subsequent downfall were often used as political leverage, illustrating the treacherous waters of Tudor court life. Her story serves as a grim reminder of the fate that befell those who found themselves entwined in the king's mercurial favor. It was a lesson in the dangers of proximity to power, resonating through subsequent generations and prompting a mix of both horror and fascination. But the truth, however, was far darker. Recent examinations of ambassadorial dispatches highlight a revelation that Jane may have been coerced into testifying against her husband and sister-in-law, Anne Boleyn, possibly under threat of her own life. This twist in her tale challenges the traditional narrative and paints her not just as a betrayer, but also as a victim of the very politics she tried to navigate. As we reflect on Jane Boleyn's life and legacy, we are reminded of the human capacity for both strength and vulnerability. Her story, embroidered into the fabric of Tudor history, serves as a powerful discourse on the complexities of human nature and power dynamics. The legacy of Jane Boleyn, vilified, victimized, but never forgotten, continues to echo through time, a somber reminder of the razor's edge that is royal favor. As the dust settled on the tragic saga of Jane Boleyn, a chilling reflection emerges from the shadows of history. Imagine, if you will, a different fate for Jane. What if she had navigated the treacherous waters of the Tudor court more cautiously? Might she have survived the capricious whims of King Henry VIII? This what-if haunts the annals of history, a poignant reminder of the razor's edge upon which court life balanced. According to royal letters of the time, Jane Bolin was deeply entwined in the political machinations that led to the downfall of her husband George Bolin and her sister-in-law Anne Boleyn. Records from the Abbey show that Jane provided testimony which sealed their fates, a decision that would eventually lead to her own demise. But here's where it gets interesting. Witness accounts describe Jane as a woman torn by fear and ambition, pushed into desperate actions. It begs the question, was Jane merely a pawn in a larger game, played by more powerful figures? The morning of February 13, 1542, was draped in an eerie silence as Jane Boleyn walked to her execution. The cold air of the Tower of London pierced through the solemn gathering. As documented, her final words were a testament to her tragic recognition of manipulation and betrayal. She declared, "Lord, have mercy on me, for I am a poor sinner." These words echo through time, a stark testament to her harrowing end. Witness accounts describe the scene as her gaze lingered on the executioner's block, where just years earlier her family members had met their grim fate. The sharp axe gleamed under the somber London sky, foreshadowing her imminent death. As the blade descended, the crowd gasped, a collective breath held in horror and pity. This moment, etched in the annals of dark history, marked not just the end of Jane Boleyn, but symbolized the brutal nature of Tudor justice. Reflecting on Jane's story, we are reminded of the perilous nature of ambition and the volatility of royal favor. Her life serves as a grim cautionary tale, warning those who would seek power at any cost. The truth, however, was far darker and more complex than mere ambition. It was a web of fear, manipulation, and survival, a dance with death in the royal courts of England. In closing, the tale of Jane Boleyn compels us to reflect on the themes of power, betrayal, and redemption. Her story, rich with emotional and historical complexity, offers a window into the human condition, reminding us of our own vulnerabilities and the timeless nature of our deepest fears and desires.